Welcome back to another episode of Friday Fight Chat, the YouTube series where TKDCoach Academy's Richie Ford and Adrian Byrne discuss ITF sparring contests from high-level competitions around the world. We dig into what's beyond the surface, breaking down tactics, techniques, strategies, decision-making, and more to help give you a different perspective on the fight. We will also look at how we can introduce some of these ideas that we talk about into our training and how to develop the next generation of top ITF sparring athletes. If you have any questions or suggestions or fights you'd like to see next, be sure and pop them in the comment box below, and we hope you enjoy. In this episode, we take a look at Julio Carlos versus Timmy Boss from the 2016 World Cup -63 final in Budapest. We look at some ways fighters build momentum, how to manipulate range, as well as finding your own and most efficient way to use your front leg effectively.
So, hey Richie, I think today we're going to look at a sparring final from the World Cup in Budapest in 2016 between Timmy Boss and Julio Carlos. So it's the final of the 63 kilos senior male sparring.
Yeah.
So let's just let that roll, and we'll have a look at it and see what we think.
Mm-hmm. So I think something there you can notice straight away is how long Timmy is starting off. Clearly, he knows a lot about Julio, and he knows that, you know, once he gets a lead on anybody, he can just pull around all day and really protect that lead really well. So I think he's conscious of his countering abilities, and I can kind of pick up on the length and the distance he's really using at the start. So
and again, he has that very slight advantage of height. It's a nice switch back kick.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was actually the first time that he tried to go short, and then Julio was able to counter it on we say the second kick. It was like a shorter one, so this is longer, we say, but you see that there's times where he kind of carries it and it turns into a shorter kick, and I think that favors Julio a little bit more, just because he's just so used to being in that environment, you know, and situation.
And Julio really does need to steal the space back every now and again to give him that option to pull the first shot and then let him count on the second intention.
If we could just pause it there a second actually and go back a little bit.
Yeah.
If we just go back to when they were just kind of like bouncing openly. If you can notice here, Timmy's stance actually, it goes like short to long. So he's going like feet are close, feet are open, feet are close, and it's kind of
take it back and see if you can see it. There we go.
Yeah, and it's incorporated into his bounce, but the deception there with his distance is really, really useful for him, because you can see Julio is trying to up the pace there with a lot of testing, but the reason he's trying to up that pace is because he's not confident because of the distance, because Timmy's able to just decept that distance, you know. So I think that might be something that's happening. Oh, nice.
Just going back here, having a quick look at this, it was a nice shot with that counter backhand, but it's just notice the switch up first. So Timmy has been left-legged all the way, and he's changed here to his right side, which has let him step in around the side kick. So we've set a pattern between the two guys where they've sparred left against left all the way along. And Timmy, as you said, he's been in that rhythm of shortening and lengthening his stance. And in there, he's just put his right leg in front. And Julio's come at him to take some space back, as the pattern has been. And Timmy's been there with that backhand loaded, ready to go. So it's nice to be able to do that in a kind of a regular, relaxed switch of rhythm. So that, you know, Timmy's kept the intensity kind of low, actually.
Yeah.
And so it's the first time that he's met Julio in the middle. Mm-hmm. So it will have come as a little bit of a surprise or a little bit of a change of rhythm there.
Yeah, I think I think Julio is a little bit more comfortable at that higher tempo, you know.
Oh yeah. If he's going, I think there we go, nice. I think it really, for the high tempo, depends who's going forward, or who's setting that high tempo. I think Timmy loves to set a high tempo himself, but doesn't want to be pushed to that high tempo by somebody else. It's a different thing. Ooh. That was really nice. When we were talking already about Timmy disguising some of his footwork as well, I think Julio's put a nice connection together with his in terms of how he's changed his footwork to get in. Sorry, so we're back to that backhand again. I didn't want to give too much credit to it, but here we go. Just in terms of how he set up this downward kick. So the little push. So if we roll that back, I want to just try that in a little bit slower. And we'll have a quick look at it.
Yeah, for somebody who's such a solid counter fighter, he's really well able to explode and go forward when he needs to as well, Julio, you know?
Yeah. Hopefully I haven't missed it now.
It's back a little bit. That's the 4-0 that he got for it, yeah.
Okay, so we need to just come back. Yeah, and he comes into it here. But I think what he's done is he's used that first kick almost there as well to shorten the distance. He lands in the shorter stance and then switches up and lets him push. And I think Julio does that from time to time very, very well. He goes from his normal longer stance into a shorter stance. And he hides it behind a movement, a step, a change of legs. And it gives him the, that ability to push from, it's much easier to push long from a short stance.
Yeah, if we just pause it there as well, 1 sec.
Yeah. Gotcha. So where are we going?
Yeah, just on that, I was just going to say the little drop side kick that he does.
Yes.
I think that's very, very effective because he kind of uses it almost like, those launching things that they have in gymnastics. What do they call it? Like
the springboard.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, where he kind of uses the leg to bounce back up off the mat very quickly, and he gets a lot of momentum and explosiveness with it. And it's not really something that you see much of, but it's very, very effective. You see here on this one, Timmy starts to shorten up his side kicks like we talked about at the start. So originally, I think his game plan was keep it long, and maybe he just got a little frustrated with the 4-0 there, and he tried to go quite short, and Julio was able to counter
quite
that.
A nice blitz there, though, out of
yeah.
And what I liked about it as well is after he got the turning kick in, he immediately went in again.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the impact it's had on the scoreboard there. Like, he's going in from 4-0 down, and he's picked a shot that's brought him straight back into it.
Yeah.
And so much beautiful shot. And in fairness, the reverse turning kick is the right call as well. Against that scenario, it's just the timing. The downward kick has landed first, so he's needed to be a little lucky to get the reverse.
The intent as well that Julio had of coming even, he wasn't really settling on that axe. The minute that was landing, he was pushing again. I think that's something as well that actually affects that timing of the band as a counter.
Yeah, I mean, as a shot, it's one of those ones where it depends. Like it getting the distance on it right against someone who's moving forward with momentum is very, very difficult. You want to see someone standing on one leg. Ideally, that gives you a perfect range on it. Especially
like you kind of have to almost do like a shift back as well to just get that distance correct if they're coming forward.
It's interesting how the counter to this, or Julio's approach to the blitz. There, a couple of times as Timmy has come forward with this, he's been caught in the straight line. So I'm curious to see what Timmy has done to push Julio onto the straight line. Notoriously evasive fighter, but and probably as much as anything, it's the fact that he set that rhythm of going to the front leg, and then didn't. So setting a rhythm for your partner to follow, and then or for your opponent to follow, and then breaking it yourself. Very effective.
Yeah, and I noticed as well later on in the round, he see the side to side lateral movement that Julio's doing. I think he gets a better inclination there of when to use that to blitz, because obviously if somebody's going from left to right, they're not really set and they don't have much balance to be able to counter you effectively. So that's a nice opportunity to maybe go forward with the blitz if your distance is correct.
Yeah, once you can push someone onto the straight line, it's a big help. I think, funnily enough, Julio's gotten a bit frustrated there.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely more, okay, I'm taking a moment to myself. What is next? There we go. And he's come back with a very definitive action there.
Yeah.
And a superb response from Timmy as well to be able to go, all right, okay, I see where we're at. And
the best thing about two of these guys and what makes it such a great fight is they never settle really with what just happened. They're always looking for the next shot, and it makes for a real exciting fight.
Yeah. I think that what is next, that, what's the next important thing to do, and going directly into that positive decision is, it's something to cultivate.
Nice step there. It's not something you often see.
Absolutely. I'll just pause here for a second. You can see Julio's, I always find this with him, I think it's one of the things that makes him difficult to spar against. When you look at the space that's in the fight there and the distance that he creates, I mean, okay, Timmy's just on one of his shorter bounces and Julio's stepping away as it happens in the moment where we freeze it. But like, Julio wants that long range a lot of the time. Yep. So he's always inviting you into his zone. So you're going to have to commit something to him, give him something to read, to be able to play at a distance where you can score. And he loves that. I think he really loves to make you offer him something. And once you've given him something, like at that range, you can't give him anything that's a threat. So you're just giving him some intention about how you want to move, and it gives him options. And I think that's where, he does that. He pulls away and he takes the space back very well when he does need it again.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, as you can see, probably at the beginning of the fight, Timmy's intention was to keep it really long and not give him that opportunity. But as you know yourself, as the fight gets into things and you get into the thick of it, your natural reactions and your natural kind of how you always do it comes out. So I think that now he's more game and ready for a fight,
Yeah. Again, Timmy's done a good job of pinning him there for the...
That's what I was talking about. It was just that moment when he was stuck straight on.
Yeah, I think as we go from here, we'll just leave the next little bit in. We'll slow it down just a touch because, as I said, there's some good setup here. So again, we've had a foot-to-foot movement there that's uncharacteristic. It hasn't been Timmy's thing. He's usually just settled. Yeah. It's created a bit more pressure. Julio's had to move bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And here you'd expect the leg again, and it's just set, and we go to the hands. You can see where he's pulled his front foot back just there. I think it's quite nice how he's pulled the foot under him just after this. So when he's looking to set up the blitz, the leg's widening, closing. He's pulls the front foot back almost a little bit and under his body. So he's starting his tilt. So it's I think what he's doing well there is kind of disguising his intention between the is he going to pull back the feet and go, or the foot and go into a long kick, or is he putting back the foot and putting it under his center of gravity to launch the blitz? And because it could be an either or, it's forcing the opponent to take it 50-50. What am I getting around here?
Yeah, and as well, what that does for Timmy is it allows him to square up on his body position when he's doing it. So he's not actually going side on like a back fist motion. He's able to really drive through Julio. So like
that's a very good point, actually.
He's only going forwards. Like there's no really stopping that. Like because he's like a train. Once you correct that body position, it's very difficult to stop. Whereas if he was going side on, it would be a different story. Like,
And for Julio, of course, as well, because he's thinking more laterally, he's pulling the mash left-right. There's less chance that he's going to have his feet under him for a stop side kick or a switch back kick. We've got a much higher intensity start here.
Mm-hmm. So I think like once we see the scoreboard here now, was it now 2-0?
2-0.
So yeah, I think that's it. And that's Julio's game. That's where he's happy to take a match,
as we like to say in Ireland, on his bike.
On his bike, yeah. But it's interesting. He never really got this in the normal time where he was just up and got to settle. But now this is where he shines. I don't think there's anybody better in this moment here. Where
if you're watching highlight reels of Julio, you'll definitely see this. This is a position he's used to being in earlier in a fight, and he can be devastating.
And usually chasing him actually works out much worse for you if you're the one chasing, But he's happy to take the 2-0 here, I feel, and he's the kind of guy that will take like a very, very slight lead, and he'll be able to protect it really well,
He knows where he is. He's balancing time against against the score that's on the board, and like when he has the option of taking an exit like that, I mean, he's finished there with 1 warning. He had plenty of time.
Yeah, but if you go back there a little bit, just in that extra round, you can see a lot of the thing that plays into his benefit there is just that testing, keeping Timmy away from being able to settle into any particular shot.
Yeah, so coming back into a forward-facing aggressive stance that you can actually attack from.
You can see he's not just retreat. He's just playing a little bit with the feet as well, and Timmy can never really get a grip of, okay, is he coming? Is he going? Is he coming? Is he going? And I think that just in the moment, that's something very hard to read, and it's something that Julio is quite sharp at, you know.
Yeah, and I think we'll leave the boys there.
Yeah, we don't
come back to ourselves. But like for me, we say as a takeaway, if I'm looking at those two fighters, and they're great fighters, you know, they've got huge accolades behind them at this stage. Like the two standout things for me were their control of space and distance, you know, to suit their aims in the fight, and they each showed moments of really good control of that in the fight, and then also their ability to disguise their intentions with that front leg in particular. But you can see it also there with Timmy, where he's disguising by having effectively the same setup with his feet, whether he's going front leg or hands. So even on a simple level, like you often have people who will only blitz on their left side, for example, but they might be right-legged fighters. So, you know, they swap the leg, right? You're queuing up already. Okay, you want to blitz me now, fine. Yeah. And that, you know, you change your reaction. And even like some really great fighters, I can say it now that he's retired, but Hong was deadly for that. You know, he wants the right leg in front to kick and the left leg in front to blitz. Yeah. And, you know, in Ireland, of course, we see so much of him, we know it. It doesn't mean you beat him all the time, but it means you know what he's going to try and do to you. But then he got better at disguising how he'd end up on the other leg, and you know, he'd use the counter-fighting style a little bit more to set up his blitz sometimes, and you know, there's ways around it. But where, like Timmy, your most dangerous weapon with your legs is off the front leg, and you blitz on the same side, you know, and you're setting both of them kind of the same way. Like you have to be really, really experienced and attuned to his body position to know which he's setting up. Yeah. So, and
I think as well, a lot of people will actually give tells with the hands when they're going to initiate with a blitz. But he kind of holds his hands standard enough for whether he's blitzing or whether he's just kicking. You know,
they tend to be that low swingy hand position for him a lot of the time. Yeah.
So like even like your eye line, it's not really, the hands aren't a threat in your eye line as such. So like they're coming from under and up. So even though like it might take a bit longer to get there, and the line is not really direct, it's kind of a tricky one to read as well at the same time, you know.
You're trading off from the base mechanical efficiency of my hand is going the shortest distance from where it starts to your face, versus you just don't see it coming. It's like kicking over the blindside shoulder.
Exactly.
You know, it might not be the easiest or the most efficient shot to take a lot of the time, but it often arrives because you didn't see it.
Yeah. And as well, like it's interesting like that, how things like that work, because I feel like even if you look at like, I know it's different, but if you look at MMA and Nate Diaz, his style of boxing is that slow style as well, and it kind of works because it's not traditional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah,
we used to say that it's one of my own guys from years ago, but we used to say he's so slow he's on time.
Yeah.
You know, the person starts to counter, and because the shot's just a little slower than it should be, you kind of start your counter, you pull out of it, and then you get hit.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, you can rhythm and time, or rhythm and speed are so linked that way that, you know, you can, if things aren't happening in the rhythm that you expect, you can really cause, you know, you can really make a simple shot a lot more effective.
Yeah, and I think that alone is the reason why, like, there's no superior technique as such, because like everything can work. Like, if you're actually have an inferior technique, it can be quite effective because it's not what people are attuned to, and it's not what people are expecting. Like, you know what I mean?
You'd say that like around how we would teach a side kick. So I mean, if you want someone to do a side kick for a pattern, you look at the foot position, the knee position. You're going to want the foot up as high as, you know, you're going to want that retraction of the knee, and sometimes like a side leg raise with a little bit of a push, you know, is just effective. It gets under the guard, it gets onto the target, it comes from below the eye line. It does, you know, it does things that just work, you know, within the context of the rules. We don't need to break the hip. We're only trying to touch the hip or to preserve a distance. So, or create distance. So because of that, yeah, that's going to work here and now.
I won't say who the fighter is, but I had because they're still competing obviously at a high level, but I had a conversation with a high international fighter recently who was talking to me about, like, maybe changing up his style or whatever. And I said to him, like, no, definitely not. Like, one of your biggest weapons is the fact you're unpredictable. You know what I mean? And some people, they watch maybe highlight videos and they say, oh, I'd love to be able to do things like this, this and this. But like, at the end of the day, like, the weapons that you have that people aren't expecting are the most valuable things. Like, definitely, like,
it is definitely applying your strengths to your opponent's weaknesses and seeing if that's enough,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the two styles that we've already picked on from Timmy and Julio there, in terms of disguising that front leg movement in particular, where would you start with getting that to happen in if you're coaching your own students?
Yeah. So, like, do you mean, like, looking at the direction of the kick is into set up other techniques, or just
thinking more of the footwork side of it? It was like, even if we're thinking of connecting with that front leg side kick, I mean, I think what both of them do very, very well there off that front leg is disguising the shortening of their stance. Because, like, in general, if you're teaching people to kick, very often, if we want them to carry across the floor, you start from the wall, you do some line drill or whatever. If the second you shorten that stance, point your standing foot behind you, covering distance is going to be a whole lot easier, because you've mechanically set up that back foot to push you. You're now using the bigger muscles. But if you set up like that in a stepping motion in sparring, it's a giveaway. You're inviting that backhand count. You're inviting someone to check you on the hip. So really, it's a case of, like, okay, I want to be in that slightly shorter stance so I can put that pressure in and cross the distance, but I've got to hide it. I can't just step and put my foot there. So if you're to start coaching people in terms of developing that kind of disguising, where would you start?
Well, first, like, I would go right back to the start. I'd like to see everybody's stance having plenty of balance. I think, like, actually, when you think about it deep down, it's the balance aspect that's so important here. Just being able to load weight onto either leg at any time, and being able to attack quickly and defend quickly is something that's very, very important. And often people will have a really wide stance, but then it's difficult for them to transition the weight effectively on the back leg or on the front leg, whatever they need to do. So I would definitely look at that first, like the weight distribution and the distance of their stance, and see what suits them better. Like, for some people, a longer stance will be easier, but for a lot of people, a shorter stance will be. But I would definitely start there, and then I would look to experiment with that a little bit. So we use with the younger kids, maybe like yellow belt level or whatever, we would use an exercise called armed forces, where you literally have a kick shield. And that's covered. Now, the person holding the kick shield, their job is to make contact with you as often as possible.
Yeah.
But it's not allowed to leave the body. So if they make contact with you, which means they obviously have to work really hard on their own footwork, like testing and squeezing space and things like that, because they can't push the shield at you. They have to bring it with their body contact. And then the kicker is looking for that opportunity to reach the side kick cleanly on the pad. So I think that will actually tell people a lot about how effective their kick is in terms of transitioning from going to defense to attack really quickly. And I think that's a nice place to start, because you're not really worried about the contact of being punched, about other things. It brings it down quite narrow in just focusing on, okay, what was the best way for me to come with a front leg side kick? Is it best for me to come at it this way? And I think you learn pretty quickly the most efficient way to use your body for that particular thing, I think that would be a nice place to start. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I think a lot of this does come down to it's a rhythmic skill, which is quite interesting, because if you go to how do people learn, how do people perceive the world and take in information, some people will be a little bit better attuned to rhythms, and it's almost like a musical kind of thing. So you'll often see, even doing patterns training, some people are unable to stay in time. They can't do it, or their timing varies up and down across the pattern. Or they get to the fast motion in Dosan, and after that everything is kind of fast, and you can imagine sitting them down in front of a set of drums and you're not going to get anything pleasing out of it. But I think that almost like that drum set kind of skill is what's required sometimes, where you're looking to preserve or set a rhythm yourself while being conscious of the other person's rhythm, and you're looking for those interruptions. So I think the first thing you do though is, before you start trying to really focus on the other person's rhythm, you have to be able to naturally be in and set your own rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what you do is you start to set challenges. So you can have the people working things in rhythm, as in, if you take what Timmy was doing in terms of a lengthening and narrowing stance, and you look at having them throw the kick on like on their, when they want to, not signaled by someone else, but when they want to, within the rhythm of that movement. And then we force them to change the rhythm or to break the rhythm. You have the other person move them, but with a little step forward or back or a shift or something like that, and then they have to try and recover or set their own rhythm again.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like yourself with the pads, I think it has to be you need an opponent to react to. You need something to disrupt it and to get you into that perception of the distance, the rhythm that you're in. Is the person taking a longer or a shorter step, a shift, whatever it happens to be, and then trying to make the shot land with the leg long and in correct distance, but then recover and reset a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the next level up you go from that is you start, when both people can do that and can set a rhythm, there's a scoring opportunity in interrupting the rhythm.
Yeah.
So if you can catch the person, as they're bringing their feet together, your kick is going to have more impact because they're in a shorter stance. They're going to travel further back. If you're hitting as their legs widen and land, so if you can actually hit as the leg lands to the ground, anytime the front leg is coming down, that you're going to be marginally heavier on it anyway. So you might pin the hip, and that brings you into hands. So you've got that whole rhythm play part to it. But I think
I would definitely
go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, based on what you said there, I would definitely focus on the whole concept of like the best time to use your timing. Like the best time to do anything is with a change of momentum, whether that's going from positional, just maintaining, to going forward, to going back. It's anytime there's a change of motion as such, that's probably the best time to act upon. So if you can just get that principle out there and pick up on that, because it's just everything you said. If somebody is stepping in, that's a good time to go. If somebody is just dropping their leg, it's a good time to go. It's a change in motion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You almost just want to avoid this equal, kind of thing. It's anything that you can do to lead the change in momentum. So what we'd often, or the rhythm, what we'd always use in the club, or the phrase we always use in the club, is set the rhythm, then break it. So you don't want to be falling into the other person's rhythm.
Yeah.
One of the points that we see, and like there was a blitz in the first round from Timmy where he got in on the left side, he finished with a high turning kick, and then he dropped and went again.
Yeah.
There's a moment, I think, from most people's training where if you did something like that you got a blitz and you threw the turning kick, we tend to come back and bounce. And it's almost like if you could be the one that kind of comes back, takes the first bounce and goes again, like almost half and go, it's even more effective sometimes than continuing. Because sometimes what we find is, if you have the person, you want to encourage the continuation, but often that means the referee steps in and stops it, or that the person travels and there's a warning. Where if you took almost that half bounce back and go again, it really leaves you in a position where you've got your first score, you're out, and then you get your second score. And that's a real momentum swing.
That's like what we were just talking about earlier as well, of just things being not normal. Such, that's not a normal occurrence in a match that you would expect.
No.
So basically, the unexpected is what you want as such, because as you said, that half rhythm change. It's not a full step that people can prepare for and expect. It's all about, this game is a lot about deception and just making things difficult for your opponent to read.
Yeah. It's almost like it needs to be just enough to let the person's shoulders relax.
Yeah.
And no more, just that slight bit to let the hands come down, and then you're in again.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why this fight as well was such a good one, because both of these guys, they never really settle on that last shot. They're looking for the minute things settle, they want to go again straight away. Any opportunity that they can get a score of any kind, they're going to go and try to take that.
I think it says a lot as well about their relationship with their coaches, that neither of them, like you see it so often that the person will turn around. There's moments where they turn to look at the scoreboard, and like I didn't pick up on it other than Julio's one occasion where he kind of went back to have a little rub of the hamstring, where it was kind of like he definitely took a moment to listen to Emmanuel, you know, who wasn't his coach, but, you know, big brother's there, so whatever, and, you know, look over the scoreboard, and then he's back in again.
Yeah.
But like, to trust that your coach has the right information for you and all the rest of it takes a little bit of relationship building. So I think that says a lot for both guys and their relationships with their respective coaches, that, you know, they're able to keep their eyes on their opponent, focusing on what's happening and not letting those kind of silly relaxations happen or those breaks in rhythm in their opponent's favor. That, you know,
well, both of those guys, I think they're really, really used to their coaches in particular.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, I know that that these guys will be able to pick up on their voices quite easily. And I know it's something that Master Cooley always says as well. You know, like, if he's coaching one of my guys and I'm close by, he was like, they'll pick up on your voice before mine, even if I'm on them. So just be aware of that, you know, just try to be careful, because every time you go to training, that's the voice that you're hearing, these words. And so it is something that you don't think of, but it definitely is something that plays part in the game.
It's very true. It's very true. Listen, that's been fun.
Yeah.
And I, like, as you said, I definitely think this is something, we're doing these chats anyway, might as well record them. You never know, someone might actually find something useful or interesting in them. So
Exactly. Especially because that's what a lot of people do in this sport anyway. We have a chat about a fight that we see, and did you see this? Did you see this? So yeah, why not record them and get people involved, and hopefully we'll get some suggestions. We got a lot of suggestions with this particular fight, so we'll see what people suggest next, and
we need to do a little bit of digging in the archives and find there's a few of the fights as well that they're fantastic fights, and I remember them. You know, I have my memory of them, but we'll have to dig into the live stream records and figure out who was fighting on the Thursday at 4:00 in the afternoon, and, you know, do it that way. But we'll manage.
Definitely. There's plenty to go around on YouTube anyway. There's some great fights there, so I'm sure we won't be stuck for any fights to talk about.
No, top content. And sure, I suppose if anyone has a really good fight of their own that they want to send us, I'm sure we could you know, have a look at some of those as well.
Definitely a good idea.